Welcome to another edition of SVSU Red Alert, your weekly update on Saginaw Valley State University athletics. I'm your host, JJ Boehm. The SVSU football team was involved in another barn burner with Findlay, but this time the Cardinals come out on top. We'll review that with SVSU football coach Jim Collins. The SVSU men's golf team got a big tournament victory over the weekend. We'll review that with their head coach Joe Vogel. That's all coming up on this edition of SVSU Red Alert. Welcome back to SVSU Red Alert. I'm JJ Boehm, joined by SVSU football coach Jim Collins. And Coach, 2 years in a row now, you play Findlay. It goes down to the very last moment, but this time you're able to escape with a 35-34 victory.
It was a great win, JJ, and I think the big thing was we knew it was going to be a challenge. They were a good football team, and finishing is what we didn't do last year. We allowed them to go down the field and get the winning field goal. This year we were able to finish with that big turnover at the end.
Talk about that play, because again, it's interesting what leads up to that. You line up for the 51-yard field goal. Scott Stanford makes it, but it's called back due to a penalty. You decide to punt it away. You do pin them inside their 10, but they're driving down before the big interception by Caleb Higbee.
You know, you mentioned the fact that we made that field goal. That would have been a school record. Unfortunately, one of our linemen, jumped a little bit and it got called back. Made the decision to punt because a 56-yarder, although Scott, I think, could have made it, the percentages weren't in our favor, so we decided to kick, make them have to drive the entire length of the field. There wasn't a lot of time left, and our defense was in that bend but don't break mode, which I think that's what you have to be in that situation with the clock running out. And we felt good about our situation, and we were able to get in a passing lane, make it a tough catch on the receiver. Looked like the receiver didn't quite get a handle on it. John Bryant came in and broke it up, and ball popped up, and Caleb made the big pick.
And obviously, SVSU just needed one first down. At that point, you were able to get it and then run out the clock, and I'm sure that was a big sigh of relief in addition to the exhilaration of getting a victory, tough earned on the road.
Absolutely, and Findlay's a good football team. We talked about it last week, and they've got good players, and I think their players played well. But the difference in the game were the turnovers. We had two big turnovers. We only turned it over once on a fumble early in the first quarter. They turned it over twice, and they were both critical turnovers. Brian Johnson in the end zone making a big turnover when they could have scored a touchdown or at least gotten points off of a field goal, and then the one at the end.
So those are the two big plays on defense. Also got two big plays on special teams in terms of blocking a field goal, and the blocked extra point on Findlay's first touchdown winds up accounting for the margin of victory.
Exactly, and every point counts, and obviously it did in this past game. And both blocks were by Jesse Somsel, and it's great, and he's blocked a lot of him and Babini. They're two offensive linemen that we put on the field goal block team, and they don't get a lot of credit on that offensive line. That's kind of a position where you don't get your name in the newspaper. But Somsel came up big in this one, blocking the extra point and then blocking the field goal in the fourth quarter.
And you mentioned the interception by Brian Johnson. You and I were talking about it in a game full of big plays. None of them bigger than that one, even though it's early in the game, because that's in the end zone, and if Findlay gets that score, they'd have gone up by 3 touchdowns.
Yeah, that would have been a tough lead to come back from it. And Brian made a great play. I think he read the play perfectly. It was hard play action right at him. And a lot of times, you get sucked up in there, but Brian did a good job of taking that step, recognizing what the play was and dropping into his zone. And he didn't just bat the ball down. He came up with the football, he caught it, and had a big return.
And that set up another SVSU score. You got a lot of big plays on offense as well. John Jennings, the GLIAC Offensive Player of the Week, he threw for over 340 yards and tied a school record with 5 touchdown passes.
Tied his school record and from last year. But anyway, I thought the big thing was offensively we had production from everybody. Andrew Dillon had his first touchdown catch, and it was a really nice pass from John, and he had to still run 30 yards to outrun the defense. He did that. Mark Thrash made an incredible catch towards the end of the first half, laid out perfectly for it, and then had another 2, and then Jeff Janis got on the scoreboard as well. But we spread the ball around, all the receivers got involved, and then we had a good day from Norman Shuford. Tough, hard-earned runs for Norman. I think he ended up close to 100 yards, but I think we spread it around enough to where Findlay didn't know whether to double cover Jeff Janis, to double cover Mark Thrash, to load up against the run. And if we're able to have that balance, once again, we're going to be successful and have the opportunity to make big plays.
And it was interesting to have two receivers have those big days, both Thrash and Janis with over 100 yards. And this was one of those where Thrash seemed to get more of his catches outside the numbers, and Janis caught a lot of his balls between the hashes.
Great point, JJ. I thought Jeff had to make a lot of tough catches in a crowd, about to get hit when he made the catch. And it was great to see him, make that tough catch, because a lot of times Jeff is just wide open, or Jeff catches the ball on the perimeter and makes a great run. But this time he had to get into traffic and make that big catch, and he did it all day long for us. And then, we were able to isolate Mark on their safety. There's a lot of times they were rolling coverage over to Jeff's side or just playing pure man-to-man press, and we were able to isolate Mark, one-on-one coverage against the safety. And Mark's really good at running his routes, and he's got great rapport with John.
And he winds up with 3 touchdowns, and he's off to a big start this year, because last year he had a lot of key catches for SVSU, but never found the end zone. This year he's off to a fast start.
Well, I think the way it looked in that game, I think those 3 touchdowns he had equaled his previous career totals, and he did it in one game, which is good to see, because it's good to see us making plays, and that's the whole key in a game like that. You have to make plays, and a drop pass and an overthrown ball will put you in a tough position in a game where it's going to be real close and it's going to be a close finish. So it was great to see Mark make those plays and John make those throws and Jeff make those tough catches, and that's what it's going to take week in and week out.
And also we talk about all the things that were by design. A couple of big scrambles by John Jennings that wound up coming up big for you and getting some first downs in key situations.
Absolutely. On that last drive, we take over on our own 7. We're down by 6. We got to drive 93 yards to get the winning touchdown. And there's 2 big scrambles that John had on 2 second and longs, where he scrambles and gets the first down and gets us momentum and really set up that winning score.
So all of this comes together in what was, again, so eerily reminiscent of last year's game with Findlay, where they're able to win by 2. This year SVSU wins by 1. These two teams just really seem to match up well with one another.
Well, it's interesting. I don't know if the defensive coaches would say that, but you make a great point, JJ. We're similar teams offensively. The offenses are similar schematically. The personnel is similar. They've got an athletic quarterback who throws it well. They've got good receivers, physical offensive line, good running back. So very similar type of offenses. And really, the defenses are really challenged in a game like that. So just as last year we lost the turnover battle, those turnovers become really key.
What did you take away from this game in terms of what it does for your team to be able to win a close game like that? Because the 2 previous games, Northwest Missouri, they were able to win comfortably. Then you come back at home against Malone, you win comfortably.
I think the one thing I talked about in the locker room after the game is just playing. In this league, you've got to play with great effort for 60 minutes, because there's going to be a lot of games like that. And you got to keep after. It's not a sprint, it's a marathon. And no matter how many plays go against you or how many plays go in your favor, it's that ability to finish on that last drive. And that was what was great to see. It was great to see us finish the way we did, to get the turnover on defense, and then offensively, when you get the ball in that last situation, be able to get that first down so you can kneel. I thought we did a great job of finishing, and it took competitive battling and effort all game long, all 60 minutes to get it done.
It was a special celebration on the sidelines after Higbee secured that, and then he did the smart thing too. He just took one step, turtled, made sure he went down to the ground. Nobody can get the ball away from me. And then, again, I think your team sensed this was a hard-earned victory.
Absolutely, and we felt like that on Sunday when we woke up. Guys are banged up and sore, and that's what football's all about. And that's the great thing about this game. When you earn a victory, especially in the GLIAC like that, you're going to feel like you played a football game, and you get that sense of gratification that you really put it on the line for the Saginaw Valley State Cardinals.
And the Cardinals this time able to come up with a victory, 35-34 over Findlay. Up next for the Cardinals, a Lake Erie Storm team. They got a big win over the weekend against Wayne State. We'll preview that game with Jim Collins coming up. But when we come back, we'll be joined by SVSU wide receivers coach Dan Fedrosi. That's next on SVSU Red Alert.
Your female Spring Hill Suites Athlete of the Week is Isabella Ismailova. Ismailova, a freshman on the SVSU women's tennis team, had an outstanding weekend for SVSU. The freshman pulled through for the team with a win at number 1 singles and 2 wins at number 1 doubles on the weekend, including a double win against perennial powerhouse Northwood. The Cardinals are back in action Friday, September 27th, when they compete in the ITA Regional Tournament in Indianapolis, Indiana. Your female Spring Hill Suites Athlete of the Week is Isabella Ismailova.
Welcome back to SVSU Red Alert. I'm JJ Boehm, joined by SVSU wide receivers coach Dan Fedrosi. But before we get to the wide receivers, you also get to work with the specialists, and you and I were talking before we came on camera. Those guys came up with some big plays for you in the win over Findlay.
Well, they did. We've had three guys that have really done well for us this year. Scott had a chance at a school record, just got called back by a false start, and those things happen. But Kyle Swales had a big punt at the end of that game. We dropped it inside the 10. And anytime you can do that, your defense is in a great position now. And we've had a true freshman long snapper, Landon Kresnak from Mona Shores High School, that's done a really good job. And anytime you have a true freshman out there, you always get worried about nerves. But he's handled it well. He's run down and covered and put himself in a great position, I think, to kind of put that punt returner last week in a little bit of pressure where he couldn't field that ball. And that had a lot to do with Landon being in great position, hustling down there. And we pinned him inside the 10. Defense came up with some great stops, and those specialists have really done a great job this year.
And you talk about that again. You were saying Scott Stanford's kick clearly would have been good from at least 56 yards, but you play the percentages. That's a tough call to make.
You know, we had a pretty hard right to left win, and I told Scott before the game, I feel good about your distance, but you got to give me a good feel how much that ball's going to move. And he drilled that thing right through the uprights, and not to say it's karma, but I just didn't want to take another chance. That's a long kick. He's got the leg for it, but if that wind would have pushed it to right to left, now they get the ball in the 25, and our defense would have had, less ground to defend. So we just wanted to take the percentages. Kyle had done a nice job on some things that we had been working on that we felt like we could get it inside the 10, and they executed it. If they don't execute it correctly, they get the ball in the 20, but we did. We got it inside the 10. That really helped our defense, and I think that had a big part to us winning that game.
And switching to the offensive side of the football, wide receivers, always nice when you have a couple of guys go over the century mark, and Jeff Janis and Mark Thrash both did that for you.
Well, both those guys played well. Not to say cliche, but our entire football team played well, and our entire football team really executed their responsibilities, and we've been running the ball well, which are going to open up some things for those guys, especially when we get down into the red zone. If we have the ability to run the football and really get some yards, and those safeties are not just thinking about covering two really good receivers, then that now opens some things up for them, especially in the red zone. And we've had not just Mark and Jeff, but Alfonso Voltaggio, a freshman, has come in and played really well through 3 games. And Michael Albrecht has been as steady as anybody we have. Deion Joby has played. So we've had a really good stable of 4 and 5 guys, again, this year that are doing some nice things for us.
And those two guys, again, able to make catches for you at key times in this most recent victory because they came up with some key third down grabs. And then Mark Thrash, 3 touchdowns.
Well, the 4th and 10 catch by Mark, it was a great throw. It really was. John put it where it needed to be put. Jeff was open. We really had Alfonso open, and Michael got open too. So we really had, they wouldn't have been wide open catches, but that's the type of plays you need to make against a good football team. So Mark came up with a catch, sold out. It was full extension, Desmond Howard style from Michigan. It was a great catch, and you needed to make it, and that's what we did. So, when those plays, those opportunities come up, if John puts it on the money, we got to come up with those catches. And when we do, that gives us an opportunity to score points and hopefully help us win the game.
How much does it help to have those guys all be seniors? You got your quarterback who's a senior, your top 3 returning receivers are all seniors as well.
Well, it really helps from the standpoint of experience, but the one thing that we've really kind of talked about the last few weeks is almost kind of bringing those guys back a little bit, because it's almost like they have too much knowledge sometimes, and then they start thinking, just play. Just run, catch the football, and that's what happened in the Findlay game. Jeff made some catches where he's getting hit as the ball or even before the ball gets there, and that's just going out and playing football. It's like being in the backyard when you're a young kid and just catching the football because you don't know any better. Don't think about the million coverages you've seen in the last 3 and 4 years. Don't think about the different little nuances in the games. Just go out there and play, and it's really been a pleasure to see those guys play. I think their highest level, and I think they can still play better though.
And also you got a big play from tight end Andrew Dillon as he was able to take one 62 yards for a score. And what really impressed me with that is after the catch, he was running away from everybody.
He looked to separate the same way our receivers have separated at some times, and that was encouraging. Now, we've had some really good play out of our tight ends. Again, not to sound cliche, but they have played really well. Andrew Dillon, Paul Baker, Patrick O'Brien has been in there and been ready to go. Those 3 guys have, I think, brought a different element that we maybe didn't have in that Northwest Missouri game. I think Coach touched on it early in the middle of last week as we were talking, getting ready for Findlay, and even again yesterday. They're blocking, their ability for Andrew to run down the field. Now you're seeing a 230-pound tight end run down the field and separate from defensive backs. It's going to give some people some things to think about and consider how they play Andrew, but his blocking has really been exceptional, and that helped set that play up again this past weekend.
And when you've got everything working together in terms of the guys who go out and run routes for you or stay in and block, I know that has to give the entire offense a great sense of confidence.
Well, it does, and I think those tight ends have played with great confidence, and I think they learned from Zach and Nate last year as really good seniors that had great feel for the game, and they kind of carry those same things. You see Andrew looks very similar to Zach and Nate, and he's been able to translate some things to Paul, to Chris Hurst, to Patrick O'Brien, that you see them carrying those things over. And that's what you want to be able to see. You wanted to see some things translated down to the younger guys, and younger guys pick up on those things, and they're really doing a nice job of it so far this year.
Well, hopefully that continues as the Cardinals take on Lake Erie this coming Saturday. Dan Fedrosi, thanks for joining us.
Thanks, JJ.
And when we come back, we'll be joined by SVSU men's golf coach Joe Vogel. That's next on SVSU Red Alert. Welcome back to SVSU Red Alert. I'm JJ Boehm, joined by SVSU men's golf coach Joe Vogel. And Joe, your guys coming off a very impressive tournament victory against the entire GLIAC.
Yeah, it was. It's actually fun to be a Cardinal today with regard to our golf program. It was a very, very impressive win by our guys this last weekend.
I know you guys were leading after round one, and that's where it seemed like your guys shot exceptionally low scores kind of as a team.
And you know what, the neat part about this team is that we've got a lot of depth, and that came out on our first round. When your number 3 man shoots 69, your number 4 man shoots 70, your number 5 man shoots 71, and then you've got to count your number 1 and number 2 man, and in this case, that first round, our number 1 man didn't count. It was Skidmore with his 76 that we had to count. So from a depth standpoint, that's an exciting place to be as far as a coach.
And then you carry it over into day 2 and are able to win by, I think, 7 strokes.
That's correct, yeah. And the strength there was Skidmore coming out. I mean, he had 76 first day, but he turns around, shoots 69. He wants to get into the red numbers just like the rest of the guys on the team. Adam Hansen, who's the team captain and a 5th-year senior, had a great tournament. He was not in the lineup the first 2 tournaments of the year. We put him in there, and you know, the kid shoots even par for the tournament. So, not, you know, and it's not to take away from what some of the other guys have been doing, but it just again kind of shows you the strength of where we're at right now in depth.
And what does that do for your team now going into some of these other big tournaments that you have coming up to be able to not just score well, but claim a victory?
Well, the victory certainly is nice, and that kind of stamps the level of play that we're at. And actually, for the last couple of years, we've been stressing that you have to be around par, and you've always got to have some guys under par. And what's happening now is that these guys all believe that they're that kind of player. They're a subpar player, and if they shoot a 73 or 74, they're not happy with themselves. And in part, maybe they realize too that we've got some other guys back home shooting 69s and 70s and that sort of thing in their qualifiers. When the rest of the team, when we're on the road, the rest of the team has to continue on playing what I call qualifiers back home. So we've got some pretty good guys in the 6th, 7th, 8th, 9th spot back home that can more than likely at some point step in if we have some issues.
What was the key for all of those low scores being put up by the SVSU players this past weekend?
I think it just gets right back to what I mentioned about getting a philosophy going within the program. And first, you've got to have good players. Second, you've got to have good players think that they're good players, and I think we may have turned the corner on that. Still maybe a little too soon in our season because it's a huge tournament coming up this next weekend with 33 teams, but then we get right back at everybody at the conference championship in 2 weeks. So again, it really boils back down to maybe a culture that we've got going right now, and it'll take a while really to figure that, to prove that itself. But
is momentum something you can carry over in golf, where this past victory now you can take into these next 2 big tournaments that you have coming up?
You would like to, however, golf is, we change venues, so now you got different greens, different lines on the course where to hit shots, pin locations, reading the greens, and then you've got the weather. So yeah, it's nice in one respect, but then in the other, you got to lay a little caution to everything with the fact that a lot of things change too. A lot of variables are always a moving thing with golf.
What do you look for from your team going into this big NCAA tournament coming up?
Well, I think probably the most important is that we get comfortable with having at least a good round, first round. I think the first round is going to be key, simply because we're playing a 36-hole venue. We'll get to play, or we'll have a practice round one day in which we'll only see one of the 2 courses. And hopefully the draw on it is that we play that first course right away so that we can get that good round under our belts. And then I don't want to say we'll be playing blind for the second round, but we will not have an opportunity to play a practice round on it. So could be a little more difficult. But again, there's where emotions and energy and all of the other things that go into believing you're a winner can override too.
Well, hopefully all of that comes together for your squad. Congratulations on the big victory this past weekend, and good luck coming up. I know you've got big tournaments the next 2 weekends as well.
Yeah, thank you. Appreciate it.
That is SVSU men's golf coach Joe Vogel. When we come back, we'll be rejoined by SVSU football coach Jim Collins. That's next on SVSU Red Alert.
This week's Spring Hill Suites Male Athlete of the Week is Jonathan Jennings. Jennings, a senior quarterback on the SVSU football team, led the Cardinals to a conference road win against Findlay, 35-34. Jennings threw for 343 yards and a school record tying 5 touchdowns. The performance was also good enough for the Great Lakes Intercollegiate Athletic Conference to name Jennings Offensive Player of the Week. The Cardinals are back in action this Saturday, September 28th, as they take on the Lake Erie College at 7 p.m. Jonathan Jennings, your male Spring Hill Suites Athlete of the Week.
Welcome back to SVSU Red Alert. This weekend, the SVSU football team hosts the Lake Erie Storm, a team that is scoring a lot of points to open the season. And Coach Collins, they just got a big victory against what everyone expected to be a good Wayne State team this past weekend, 35-17.
That's a huge win and a huge confidence boost for Lake Erie, because they had been in some close games those first 2 weeks against Gannon and against Ferris, and lost close battles where they had scored a lot of points but couldn't win in the end. And to get the big win over a Wayne State team that we know 2 years ago played in the national championship game, I think that's a huge boost for Lake Erie.
And as you said, those 2 losses that they have were both close, and they scored a lot of points in those 2 games. They scored 49 in their loss to Ferris.
Yeah, and I'll say this, JJ, just the same thing we talked about with Findlay. High-powered offenses, spread, wide open, option reads, the throwing game that goes along with it. It's a great challenge for the defense to play against that type of team again this week.
And a Lake Erie team that obviously has shown some improvement then over what they had last season. You go back 2 years ago, that was a very competitive football team. They had so many seniors that were part of that first ever recruiting class at Lake Erie. Then those guys graduate. I think it took them a year to retool, but now it seems that they're right back where they were a couple of years ago.
Once again, the whole thing for Lake Erie has been great play from the quarterback position. He's done a good job of spreading things around, throwing the football, running the option, and they got a tailback that's dynamic. So I think that combination of quarterback and running back on offense. And then if you watch them on defense, especially against Wayne State, they're playing with a lot of motion, they're playing with great effort, they're physical, and they force a lot of turnovers that were the difference in the game.
So obviously then ball security has to be one of the keys you'll be working on this week on offense.
Well, we work on it every week, but you could see how it plays out in a game like that, where the Findlay game, it was a deciding factor, obviously, and for Wayne State last week, I think it was the deciding factor. Wayne State was driving a couple times and turned it over in the red zone. You can't do that, so you got to secure the football. It's going to be critical.
And Lake Erie, a team last year, obviously huge numbers in the passing game. You can't expect that necessarily again, where Jeff Janis got, I think, 300 yards receiving last year. But obviously that's something where I'm sure you're going to be looking to see what you can get in the passing game this week.
It's the same thing. We talked about it last week. If you can run the football and force those safeties to creep up and try to protect against the run, then you got a chance for big plays in the passing game. But the other thing that we need to get better at, that we need to keep working on and improving, is our third down efficiency. When we get in the 3rd and 4, 3rd and 5, 3rd and 6, that's where the passing game is even more critical. The ability to get that 7-yard gain, move the chains, extend drives. So I think it's a combination of running the ball well, taking your opportunities and play action for big plays when they exist, obviously, but then also being real efficient on 3rd down, so where you can convert and keep those chains moving and keep your defense off the field.
Lake Erie, a team that normally involves a lot of misdirection, always throws in some trick plays as well. Does it help to have gone against a Findlay team that has a lot of very good athletes on the perimeter?
Absolutely, and once again, offensively and defensively this week, we'll be practicing against ourselves quite a bit because of the similarities in personnel and the schemes. I think Findlay a little bit different, but enough similarities with personnel, as you said, to prepare us for what Lake Erie is going to throw at us.
What do you do too now to get your team ready for their second home game of the year? Because this will be Hall of Fame weekend. There'll be a lot of extra attention. Make sure that they come out and are able to match what they did in a very impressive first half against Malone 2 weeks ago.
Well, it's always good to be at home, and the atmosphere we had for that Malone game was outstanding. And hopefully all the students will come out and create that same atmosphere, because that got our guys' energy. There was a ton of energy at Wicks Stadium last Saturday when we played Malone. And we need that same energy back in the stadium. But also, and I talked about this, John Bryant's blocked punt against Malone really energized the crowd and energized our team. So we're going to need to make some big plays early to keep that momentum and that energy going.
Well, hopefully all of that energy and momentum continues for the Cardinals. Coach Collins, good luck against Lake Erie.
Thanks, JJ.
And we thank you for joining us, and we hope you have enjoyed this edition of SVSU Red Alert.